robot-like out of the forest and that you blew up with your gun when you could eventually stop panicking. Because if Erik Prince is anything, Erik Prince is the following around firearms. That's right, a pussy. Erik Prince. You're a pussy. And you know who I am. This is the novel Newer News from Nowhere. I am its author, Brer Abbott. I have news of Waldensia, of sickness and death among the impregnable people, the super rich, who had it all figured out because they had employees like Erik Prince protecting them. Except what is going on? We are all dying one by one of fatal, familial insomnia. Why is this happening? Enter the greatest detective in the universe. Ladies and gentlemen, Yeshua Nasri. I'm sorry, I can't get this introduction right. Yeshua Nasri hyphen Poirot. I apologize, guys. I told you I wouldn't screw it up this time. Yeshua Nasri Poirot. He's very dapper. He's very smart. He asks difficult questions, as does old Brer Abbott. Brer Abbott is finding himself to be very unpopular these days on the left, especially because Brer Abbott goes to meetings of the left and constantly says to the left, "What the f-"
It's going to keep popping up. It might pop up in the fall on the continuing resolution to fund the government. They're trying to put it into things that must pass. And so we have to make it controversial to the point where they don't want to keep putting this rider in, that they just leave our nonprofits and our churches alone, leave this protection in place, and block this secret dark money spigot from being turned on. So that's what's happening. And so the big ask right now is for you to make meetings, set up meetings with your members of Congress and your senators over the August recess. And so that's why we're training you to be able to do that well, to do that with these specific coalition members. And I know some folks do this a lot, and you're fatigued. And I would encourage you to work with your local nonprofits and churches, and we can try to help you with that, help connect you so that if you don't feel like the ask coming from you is going to work, that maybe someone else can be the messenger. But then there's a bunch of you who are newer to this, and this training is really for you too. It's not hard. You do have to be persistent, but it's not hard to set up a meeting. It's so important because especially your Republican members of Congress haven't heard necessarily our perspective.
Oh.
And if you can get a meeting with them,
that would be
they
so
might
beautiful.
change their position on this.
Oh,
it's really
right.
a different issue than some of the things you've been doing before, like I said earlier. So we hope that you'll try to get a meeting with the senior staffer, if not the member of Congress themselves, because this is our one chance before they come back from August recess and start voting on these things that are going to have hundreds of riders in them. We have to keep this rider out of the budget, out of appropriations. So any quick questions before we get back to Bill and how to do these meetings?
Kenny, I have a quick question. This is Dave about the text of the rider. Is that available, or can you reference where we could find that?
I can send a connection, a link or a text itself in the notes.
Great, thanks
for that. Any other questions? All right, back to Bill.
No, I appreciate you spelling that out, Kenny. I think one thing, too, to add is that, and this is what I'm hearing from our legislative staff here at AU, is that a lot of offices either know very, very little about the Johnson Amendment and just know anything they know, they just know from Donald Trump kind of riffing on it a couple times, but they've never really heard about it, and there's a lot of either misinformation or no information. So the good thing about these meetings is that except for maybe a handful, I don't foresee these being real oppositional. This isn't healthcare or immigration. This isn't going to be going in and holding people to task on much. It's going to be really doing a lot of education, and again, I think the wider and broader constituency shows a powerful breadth of messages, just as Kenny was sharing. The other thing I would point out, if you're interested in getting some, having more talking points, we have a website. Don't ask me why it's called this, but it is. It's projectfairplay.com. It's projectfairplay.com. And then under resources, you can see all kinds of links to talking points and to all kinds of other things. And we'll be sending those out to our folks, and we can make those available as well to others when people start setting up meetings. So, as I was saying, I think the most important thing right now, and I agree entirely with Kenny. In fact, when I used to live in Kentucky, and before that I lived in Texas, and I was doing the whole setting up the meetings, and the one thing that it really doesn't take a lot of skill. The one thing you just simply have to have is patient persistence.
This is really a slick website.
I had to call sometimes.
The fuck is this
4,
thing?
5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times to finally get a hold of somebody who could tell me.
Americans United.
If I could meet with
for separation of church and state.
Staff. And it really took sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. But you just have to stick to it, be patient, be nice, be gracious, but also be persistent. So that's why we say to go ahead and begin calling and asking for open dates and open times, and particularly for senators to know what part of the state they're going to be in and when, so that you can, find out when they're going to be closest to you. Well, at the same time, you want to begin reaching out now. Some of you are in coalitions, and you know exactly who to reach out to. Some of you are saying, you know what, I want to organize a meeting on this. I'm just not sure.
Board of Trustees.
Who in the nonprofit world or faith leaders or whoever else could join us. Then that's when you need to either let me know or let a Katie know, and a Katie can let me know, and then we can start hunting up folks to see if they can join you, because there's folks out there. The main thing right now we need folks who are going to volunteer to lead on this and to put together the meeting, to find out the time, to organize the materials, and to help assign the different roles to folks for the meeting. So that's the next 2 weeks. Really, will be the bulk of it. Will be gathering people together for a meeting. I always say you want to anywhere from 4 to 6 is a good group. If you have any more than that, oftentimes offices can't. They don't have a lot of big rooms to host those kinds of big meetings. But you just need to be in communication with whoever you're going to be meeting with to let them know how many people are coming. But you want to aim for, I think, a good 4 to 6, or 5 to 7, somewhere in that range is a good number. Once you have recruited folks to your team, then you want to, you can do a lot of this by email, but at some point you're either going to want to, I'll say this, the worst thing I've ever seen, and I've been a part of a lot of really bad in-district meetings. I've been a part of some good ones, but the bad ones almost always have one thing in common. They throw people together at the last minute and assume that everybody is kind of on the same page. And that is a recipe for disaster, and I've seen it up close. So the really good meetings are when you have, and we've tried to spell these out in terms of roles to take. So you'll need someone who's a facilitator oftentimes, and usually the best facilitators are the ones who took the lead on creating the meeting. They kind of know all the people that are there, and they know the people they're going to be meeting with. Then you want to have people that have the stories and the perspective. You want someone, I think it's usually one person, maybe two, but I think it's easier if there's just one person who's really hitting home some of the different points that you really want to make. And you want to go ahead and establish what those points are. Now, there'll be different reasons, a pastor will say that they're opposed to any kind of weakening or the repealing of the Johnson Amendment simply because they don't think their congregation is a place where partisan politics belong. They don't want to have that in the life of their congregation. But you're going to have, as Candy said, have other folks, people that run nonprofits say this will. We literally heard someone on a call one time say that if they weaken or eliminate the Johnson Amendment, you're really going to do tremendous damage to nonprofits for a lot of different reasons. And so having people illustrate and share why their communities are concerned about this is really, really key. And I'd say, although we spend a lot of time on the specific statistics and all the different talking points, I always find that that staffers and the staffers tend to write down a whole lot more when it comes to the different constituencies who are represented and who are there in the room, and the different stories and the ways in which they see this as weakening or repealing this provision would impact their community. And then the last thing, whether it's the facilitator or another person, you always want to make sure you have an ask. Again, I've seen a lot of good meetings end up going nowhere because they just kind of settled on, well, this feels good, so we'll just end it here. But you really do want to have someone, you have to have someone make the ask. And the ask is, will you refuse to support any kind of amendment that's brought forward that weakens or repeals the Johnson Amendment? So having all of those things, a facilitator, different stories or constituencies represented, someone who's talking about the different specifics in the specifics of the bill, and then the ask. Those are all things that you want to make sure that you cover. And then I don't want to go too deep into it. I do want to stop because I think I've been going too much. But on the handout, you can see, kind of how the meeting can go, exactly kind of the order of what you can take. And then I think another thing that oftentimes gets left out is after the visit and doing follow-up, which to me is just as important as doing the meeting itself. So when you're in the meeting and you reference something and you perhaps don't have it with you, and the staffer says they'd like to see it, you want to make sure that you send them all the relevant links and materials that they need so that they can pass on to the member or to the staff in DC so that they can have it as they're debating kind of what they're going to do. Anyway, so let me stop there. I think, again, the important thing the next 2 weeks is to gather people together, to begin calling the schedule and being persistent and trying to find out when and how you can meet with your member of Congress and or their staff, and then putting together your team and then meeting with your team ahead of time. I would say at least a couple days before, either face-to-face, which I know is difficult, or at least on the phone, so that you can have the plan going into the meeting and not be throwing it together at the last minute.
Great. Questions for Bill? I would love, Bill, if you wouldn't mind actually going through the other roles besides the facilitator. I thought that was the most helpful to have structured. Someone who goes to lobby meetings all the time. I've never structured it that way, and I think it's actually really helpful.
Do it as a triumvirate, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as I said, the facilitator is the one who kind of kicks off the meeting and kind of helps pace it. And the facilitator, I facilitated some meetings where I knew ahead of time there was a couple of folks that were that like to talk a little bit too much or like to get way off topic and say all kinds of interesting theories or different things. And so I would go
we can't go off topic. God forbid. We should actually talk about something that's fucking important.
That would be a good thing, but I am gonna cut you off, or I'd sit right by them and I'd just put my hand on their leg if they got to going too fast. Oh. And I'd say in as southern way as I could, we'd love to hear about that maybe after the meeting and then move on. But then you want to have people introducing themselves, and I think that's where they can really, you don't want that going on forever, but that's where people can really describe who they represent, where they, if they're part of some nonprofit.
Never occurred to these dum-dums to have a mixer beforehand, like get together for some sody pop an hour prior to your yakety yak and find out what you're actually there for.
Give a real brief, no longer than 45 seconds to a minute, AR, so the staffers know not just the name of the person, but really who is behind this person. How is this person linked together with the rest of the community? And
lovely that the staffers are there.
Specifically talking about the different.
All that matters is that the people are there.
And we'll have materials for this that people can talk about. What the Johnson Amendment
And are they part of the people or are they part of the staff?
And I think that's when you lay a little groundwork as to the context of what the Johnson Amendment is. That's a good time to bring in a couple of folks that talk about, what, this is why this can really do damage to our democracy. This is why this can really do, repealing or weakening it can really do damage to, nonprofits and to faith communities. And just giving, again, I wouldn't say more than a few minutes each, but explaining why, we care about it. And I think having 2 or 3 different people share that would be ideal and show a very broad cross range of constituencies that really have the same goal, which is really what the whole purpose of in the district meeting is to show the power of our movement. And then you want to have someone after, and I even think it's good to, you can play it one way or another. You want to give them time to respond, but I always like making the ask first, rather than saying, hey, do you have any questions before we, ask you what we're wanting? Because what can happen is they can filibuster. And some staff are really, really good at this. They just start talking in all kinds of different directions. And then 15...
What the fuck are you doing? Why are you so fucking stupid? American left? How stupid are you? You're still talking about having meetings with existing politicians as if they will ever listen to you? Are you insane? Why are you not running for public office yourself? You're so pathetic. Anyone can do this job if they are scum. And you are not scum. You're not scum. Why are you so timid, American left? Run for office. Replace these people. It's that simple. Your message is straightforward, which is that you're neither left nor right. It doesn't matter if you watch, it doesn't matter if you bury your head every day in a bucket of vomit called Fox News, or if you, I don't know, maybe you're a person who actually has the sensitivity and intelligence to watch, and also the civic concern to watch something called The Majority Report with Sam Cedar, I add, and Michael Brooks, and the people who work on this show are extraordinary. And there need to be more of them, because I realize I haven't been, I always say Kelly and Matt because they're always there, and they're always saying, and Kelly is always saying something that just course corrects the conversation. And Matt has always got some footnote from something he's read, which is, wow, that's exactly the detail that applies to this precise moment. How did you know that about the caribou meat smokers of central Uzbekistan and their way of organizing themselves politically? Dude, that's really an interesting detail. But, then the top brass are veering off because they've entertained a phone call from a fucking libertarian. Why are you doing it? Don't you understand, Majority Report, that you are wasting our time when you're talking to these idiot libertarians, because They're not idiots. They're actually very smart people, except they've been misdirected by end-time capitalism, just like everything else has been misdirected by end-time capitalism. Just like you, Majority Report, with Sam Seder and Michael Brooks. I hear you advertising products, you too, are at risk of being misdirected by end-time capitalism. Why do you keep promoting your Amazon link? Amazon.com exists for one purpose only, which is to crash this planet into hell. Yes. Jeff Bezos. My friend, Mr. Turtlehead. My friend, Mr. We used to compete as to who could be medevaced more, Jeff and me. I can assure you that is a true story. I can assure you that I have honeymooned many times with many rich wives. And I can assure you that my having to be medevaced from Angkor Wat is still famous around Siem Reap. Listen to me when I'm talking to you. I know of what I speak. You can't keep promoting Amazon.com, Majority Report, with Sam Seder. Because, Sam Seder, I've noticed that you among the staff have children. Every time you advance the interests of Sam Seder, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because you're a smart guy and you're doing important work. I think I've said previously that you are the Walter Cronkite of the 21st century. That's a very important job, Sam Seder. But you are also the father of young children, and you are, every time you talk about Amazon.com, you are advancing the day. You're speeding up the day that your children are dead because of Amazon.com. Amazon.com is only interested in one thing, which is automating the shipping of literally everything around the planet, regardless of recipient. Because there is a through line from the soul of John D. Rockefeller to the soul of Jeff Bezos. Yes, we have villains living amongst us to this day, chiefmost of whom is doctoring Henry Kissinger. Majority Report, you need to join me and daily call, Majority Report, for the arrest of Henry Kissinger. Make it like, you know, Cicero would always end a speech, regardless of the topic. Cicero would end the speech with, I think he said, Carthage must be destroyed. No, I'm not that bloodthirsty. I'm only interested in justice. Justice is only available in present reality. We have a major criminal on our hands who lives amongst us. You, the Majority Report with Sam Seder, have identified this fact. You need to act upon this information every single day. Just as you talk about the Gowanus Canal every single day, Sam Seder, you need to talk about the arrest of Henry Kissinger, because that is the key historical moment when we Americans finally acknowledge that there is one monster living amongst us who has caused all of this, and he needs to be tried. And we need to see him at least in the orange jumper. That's what we need to see. We normal Americans, and we rely upon you. And I'm not just talking to Michael Brooks and Sam Seder anymore. I am talking to the entire progressive podcasting fraternity. Call for the arrest of Henry Kissinger every single time you are on the air, and finally produce a result that we progressives can point to as a result. I am Brer Abbott. This is Brer Abbott's Panic Room. This is also the novel Newer News from Nowhere. Arrest Henry Kissinger.